Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Black Mental Wellness Lounge. I'm Brandon. I'm back off of a brief hiatus, just taking care of life and things. But I'm excited to have this conversation today. We talked about this in different avenues across a number of videos, but today we're gonna give it some real good focus with everything that's going on. Um, really talking about issues around racism, discrimination, and Black people's mental health, and like what that really means. And so we talk about there being some linkages, but like, what does that really mean? Like, what are we really, seeing? How does it impact us, and in what ways, and how can we, push back against these things? I think is of the utmost importance. And so today I have brought on one of my good friends, Janel Cubbage, to jump on and have this conversation with me. So this is one of my buddies in the field, and so I'm so excited to have her on. Janelle, how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I'm gonna toss it to you to introduce yourself to the lounge.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. My name's Janelle Cubbage, and I am a suicidologist, and I also am a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in Maryland. So I see clients through private practice.
Awesome. So thanks so much for being on. And I know this is like a passion topic for the both of us. Like we've had so many like offline conversations and online conversations about this in different spaces. But really like I just wanted to package this up in a way for other people to really digest this. And so when we talk about racism and discrimination, we know how profound it's been in our history. We know the impacts that it's had, financially and with physical health and other things. How does, like now, like racism that persists now, discrimination that persists now, like how do those things impact our mental health, like now, like right in this moment?
Yeah, so I think that we can't unwed that from intergenerational trauma and past racism, right? Because even though we're experiencing racism and discrimination at this point, you know, our parents, our grandparents, their parents, and so on and so forth have experienced racism and discrimination, which can impact the way that people move in the world, how they interact, and also their familial interactions. Um, so I I don't think it's possible to neatly um, unwed those things. In the present, though, racism and discrimination impacts our mental health on a number of levels. Um, it can be anxiety provoking. Um, we hear a lot of external messages about assumptions and generalizations that people make about us because of the identities that we hold. And after repeatedly hearing those things, you can begin to internalize it and believe it yourself, which can start a pathway for depression, for low self esteem, um, among other things. And I think one of the most profound ways that it can show up for us today um, is racism is trauma and it produces trauma responses like other trauma. Um, it can lead to hypervigilance. So, always looking out, looking for a threat, and just being extremely aware of your surroundings. And it can cause nightmares, flashbacks to specific incidents. It can give you a sense that your life is not going to be very long. Um, it can give you somatic symptoms too, and I think that that's a way trauma manifests that a lot of people don't realize. Stomach aches, headaches, your muscles are perpetually tight, intense, having muscle aches, having issues with sleep, being fatigued. Um, low mood or even irritability. All of these things can be signs of trauma responses. And that's how racism can impact us on a mental health level in the present.
No, that's a really good point. It is something that is intergenerational that we've, carried to this point as well. And it's so like I like how you brought up like those physical aspects as well. Like there was a post that I saw not too long ago where like it was literally just like, hey, sit up straight, like relax your shoulders, like unclench your jaw, like like move your arms out, pull them back in, and they were like, release some of that, some of that weight of what you're carrying. And I think so much for us, like a good reminder for us to remember those connections because we're enduring these things on a day in day out basis, so like that weight, we may not always see it, but our body understands like what's happening. Yeah, I would definitely also want to talk about the impact of institutional racism. So like we've talked a lot about the interpersonal stuff, like we've had a number of conversations about that, but really like looking into this thing of we're all a part of these different systems, whether we want to be or not, whether we want to remove ourselves from it. Like though there are some systems that we're going to touch and that we're going to hit that could impact us when they don't do what they are set out to do in a foundational sense, but perpetuating these harmful systems towards black people. So just for our viewers, like give us a couple examples of what institutional and systemic racism looks like, and how it impacts us.
Yeah, I mean, I have many examples, but um, historically, we can talk about how um, in the South, uh, slave owners were wondering why their slaves were, excuse me, slave owners were wondering why the people they were enslaving were running away, um, as if that's like difficult to figure out. But anyway, uh, they commissioned a doctor, Dr. Samuel Cartwright, who studied enslaved people and developed a disorder called drapetomania. And he basically asserted that uh, these enslaved people were overcome with um, manic emotion and it caused them to run away. And I think that's just one foundational example of institutional racism is pathologizing normal reactions to abnormal circumstances. Um, Benjamin Rush, the founder of American psychiatry, also came up with a psychological disorder. He asserted that um, Black people suffered from a disease similar to leprosy that made their skin black, and the treatment for that would be to turn their skin white. And I'm not going to go into detail of how they treated or achieved that, but I think it's always important to look at our history and what these institutions and systems were founded on. Mental health is not exempt from scrutiny or colonization. Mental health, psychology, psychiatry has long been used to further racism and even provide quote unquote scientific evidence of superiority of one race over the other or try to justify continued segregation or poor treatment of groups of people. We know about the issues of IQ testing and um, how those assessments, along with other earlier psychological theories, led and lended itself to the continued dehumanization of Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color. And we see it today in terms of, well, the 80s aren't today, but, you know, a few decades ago, um, the overrepresentation of Black people being diagnosed with schizophrenia because providers and because mental health and our diagnostic system is extremely Eurocentric. It's not inclusive of other cultures. Um, so, in certain cultures, it's normal to see your loved one that has passed away and talk to them. Um, and when people from a Eurocentric culture encountered that, they labeled that as psychosis, when really it's a normal, accepted cultural practice in other cultures. Um, Looking at dreadlocks and thinking that they're unkempt and dirty, um, and using that as evidence of meeting diagnostic criteria for psychotic disorders. Um, and there's a lot of um, information out there about how mental health diagnoses and schizophrenia in particular have been used to try to silence people, community organizers, and people fighting for racial and social justice. We see it today in the mental health field. Um, Social work often works hand in hand with um, law enforcement agencies, um, and child protective services, child welfare, and it's not just social work, it's psychologists, it's counselors. We're all complicit in this, but mental health has been, can be, and still is being used as an extension of policing people. um, Looking at people who are most likely to have their children removed from the home, it's Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color. Um, Taking kids away and disrupting the family structure, um, it's just another way of policing and perpetuating institutional racism, as is mass incarceration and continuing to allow poverty to exist, as well as perpetuate the uh, contributing factors to poverty. Poverty did not just magically appear one day. Poverty is manufactured. It's a deliberate choice, and not one of the people living in poverty. It's a deliberate choice of the systems and institutions, and the decisions made about investments in communities, including infrastructure, roadways, employment, the public school system, the judicial system, healthcare, access to healthcare, all of those things. And poverty can influence living in poverty is a risk factor for mental health, as well as a number of other physical health conditions. So everything is really interconnected and interrelated, but continuing to use Eurocentric diagnostic standards, Eurocentric treatments, Eurocentric standards for uh, providing an evidence base for a certain intervention or treatment, um, is one way that we're continuing as the mental health system to perpetuate racism.
So that was super comprehensive. Like there's so much to unpack from what you just said. And one of the things that I've experienced, you've experienced, we've all experienced it, is being in a place where the racism isn't so overt, and where like you watch policies and how people move and how people are promoted, or who gets voice, who gets credit, who gets acknowledgement, who gets their ideas even brought to the table. Like I talk to people often about this dynamic of like you're at a table, you're at a, in an office setting, or somewhere where it's like, it's uh a small amount of your black colleagues, and what you'll have is that someone will throw out, a black person will throw out this idea that like everybody goes silent, like there's no feedback, there's no response, and then doesn't even have to be 5 to 10 minutes later. It could be the very next person can give the same answer who's not black, the reverse, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, like this is the greatest thing ever!" Like, "Oh my gosh, like I love this," and like there are those ways that these systems now have, identified methods to perpetuate these things without there being less like, this is racism, like, as upfront and aggressive as it is. And since we're all experiencing this, like there is a natural thing to want to fight back. Our ancestors have fought back, for centuries. And so, we want to fight back now, and I think part of the challenge is that, many people will say like, we'll try to use, no, the covert racism to be like, oh, this isn't really racism, like this isn't this, which in itself can be tiresome for a black person living in these systems. So like I just want to get your perspective on this, like how do we fight back in these places without burning ourselves out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good question. Um, I think one answer is to recognize that finding joy and resting is fighting back.
Mhm.
That is an act of resistance. It's something that, oppression wants to deny us. And that is fighting back. I think a lot of people look at it as dropping the ball, not moving the needle, whatever the case may be. And that's just simply not true. Um, I think also it's really important to have self awareness and really know ourselves and what we can handle. And, things that start to pop up for us that let us know that, maybe we need to take a step back, or find another way to be involved because it's becoming too heavy. It's starting to impact you, in a negative way. Taking care of yourself, remaining healthy so that you can continue to live and fight the fight is fighting back. If you look at all of the health inequities faced by our communities, um, simply being and existing is fighting back. So I think that we have
Right.
to really look at the way that we define fighting. It's not always overt, um, just the way that racism is. Sometimes it's more covert. So um, remember to take care of yourself. Make sure that you're eating regular meals, that you are staying hydrated, that you're moving your body, uh, doing things that you enjoy doing and that you love doing. And surround yourself with people who you feel safe with.
Mhm.
Um, those are my suggestions, and that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, I feel like you were talking like right to me. I haven't eaten anything today. I haven't been doing any of that stuff that I need to do. And even the concept of rest is a newer one. I know for me and a lot of other people in this space, like it's a newer concept of it being a part of resilience and resistance, because that's what you described has been a part of what we've done, for so long. It's just like, racism, discrimination, attacks against black and brown people have not stopped, they've not let up, they've not eased up. So it gives you this sense of, which is designed to do, as you said, but give you this sense of, if we pause, if we take a break, it just gives another advantage to, these institutions that are set up to harm us. And I think your point, can't be overstated, that it's a collective of people moving against this, like, all the time. Like, there are people, in the same way that racism persists, we have persisted and we have pushed forward. And so it's so critical for us to, remember that, because we could burn ourselves out feeling like, I have to be the one to take down like this system, and, you know, this sense of, like, being a vigilante, and it really doesn't, lend itself to helping us. And so I think those are some really good takeaways there as well. And so we've
And
already talked about.
if I can add,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
if you think about it, that is the point of racism. The point of racism is to have us feel like we must be fighting at all times so that we do
Right.
become burnt out and so that we stop fighting. That's the point of racism, is to try to exhaust us. And
Yeah.
I really like your point about the fact that there's a whole collective fighting. It's not just us. And I really think we have to challenge as a community that notion of, like, it has to be me, I have to be doing it, because individualism in that way is very Eurocentric. If you look at
Right.
the cultures we originated from, it's always been about community. And Audre
Mhm.
Lorde said uh, there is no liberation without community.
Mhm.
So we have to do this together. There is no I. That's the
Right.
point. If you're playing a sport, right? You have a whole team there with you. And when you need to take a break, whether it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, there's someone there to step in for you during
Right.
that break so that you can rest, recharge, and return to the game. And this is the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, important for us to, remember that too. Like, I tell people about, like, you know, there's also, like, good, lane work that happens, and understanding that I can't do everything, right? Like, we have this, like, this is what, like, this is one of the things that we do. We're not limited there, but it's where our strengths are. And so, allowing and connecting with other people who have strengths in other areas, like, it's, 100%, like, a part of that teamwork that really makes change happen. And so I wanted to, like, you talked about, the mental health system, and how, like, it's perpetuating a lot of, these terrible systems and harmful systems that we've encountered. And so, there are a lot of people that watch this that, are in the mental health field, but there are a ton of people that aren't. So, like, how do, people who are not necessarily, like, practitioners or clinicians, who may be community workers or family or friends, like, how do we support each other in, dealing with these weights that we experience, um, on a day-to-day basis? And if your dog wants to get in a shot, just pull him in.
Come on,
He's
Ellie.
we love pets on the lounge also.
This is my co-therapists. So
Hey.
I think, one, being community, finding community is really important to our well-being and our healing. I can't understate that enough. Um, Recognizing that we're all interconnected, and what I do, even if it's not directly to you, for you, about you, is going to impact you in some way. So
Mhm,
I think we have to really be intentional about how we act, what we respond to, and the ways that we show up for people.
mhm,
Um, and we have to take care of each other. So, I think checking in with someone, if you need to vent, if you need advice, whatever it is, and seeing if they have the capacity to do that, is a sign of respect, um, and compassion. And I also think setting that boundary with yourself, and knowing what you have to give and what you can't give and being okay with that um, is something else that we can do. So if you reach out and someone says they don't have the capacity um, to support you in the way that you need, a lot of times I think people can internalize that and think that the person doesn't care or be
Sure.
upset. So just as, we want to respect everyone, we need to take care of each other and respect that that person is being honest and upfront with you that they're not able to provide that support. So the care goes both ways. Um, and I think just like you said, stepping up when other people need to take a step back, um, reminding the people around us that it's okay to take a step back, um, and maybe even point out to them if they don't see it that themselves that maybe they should take a break, um, whatever the case may be. And I think encouraging one another, loving one another, um, and finding joy together.
Absolutely. Those are some awesome ways to do that. And so as we wrap up, I just, first of all, thank you for jumping on. And I also just wanted to see if there are any, other thoughts that you have, and also to let other people know how to get connected to you and some of your work, whether it be social media or otherwise.
Yeah. My only other thought is I've just really been reflecting on the importance of community lately. Um, and as much individual healing as we do, um, we really have to focus on healing our community and building our community. Um, if you want to get connected with me, I'm at the Tattooed Counselor on Instagram and TikTok. And I actually just opened my business. Still in the process of getting some things together before I can start seeing clients through it. But I started a collective. I named it Ubuntu Healing Collective. Ubuntu is a philosophy about how we're all interconnected and um, our humanity is linked to our kindness to one another. It can be loosely translated to I am because you are, or I am because we are. Um, and I really want my business to be a place of healing individually, but also at the community level, uh, and providing a safe space for BIPOC clinicians, students, etc. So keep an eye out for that. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, reach out. I'm always happy to chat with people. So
That's awesome. Congratulations on starting that business. And, we'll definitely be looking forward to that, and we'll make sure to promote that on our stuff as well. But Janelle, I can talk to you all day. Thanks so much for jumping on. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and talk with us today.
of course. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for jumping on, and we'll be back next week.